Hi guys, so today I am coloring this piece as usual, but I'll have a link to the first half where I did the line art in case you missed that. But yeah, so when I started this piece, I actually had a pretty clear idea of what colors I wanted to use. And I know that I mentioned this a little bit, but I always try and usually it actually happens pretty subconsciously, but when I'm working on the line art for a piece, I usually end up thinking about what types of colors I want to use for it and just kind of the mood that I want to show with it. And a lot of times it ends up not actually looking at all like that in the end, but it gives me a really good jumping off point, something to start basing my colors on and working off of. But for this one, I knew that I wanted one of the figures, she's a ghost, but I wanted her to have a very green saturated color to her entire form. So I wanted her to be very, very green. And I knew that I wanted the other figure to be more of this warm purple color. So purple that leaned a little bit more towards the red side of it. And I knew that I wanted the lighting that would be coming in from the window to be very cool. I wanted it to feel like the outside was all misty and rainy and chilly and cold. And that way I felt like it would make the interior feel very warm and cozy. At least that's how it feels for me when it's really rainy outside. Being inside with a warm drink, it just feels so much cozier when it's cold outside and you know that you're somewhere warm and safe. And that's the mood that I wanted this piece to have, is that they were these two people just hanging out having this conversation, all cozy and warm, and it was cold outside, and they happened to be these monsters basically. So yeah, I was excited about the idea of what I wanted to tell so I did mention in my line art video, but I end up changing her face a ton. Well, her face stays looking pretty similar to how it begins, but I end up doing a lot of different minute changes to it. And the thing is that before I started even coloring, I knew that her face wasn't right. There was just something very unsettlingly incorrect about it, but I couldn't figure out what it was, and I just decided to ignore it and move on to the colors, which obviously was a dumb idea because I knew it was wrong. I knew that I needed to fix it. And once I started coloring, it made it a lot harder to do any of the edits because I had to change the colors around the face, and it just took a lot longer to do the same changes that I could have done if I had made the edits before I started coloring. And that's something that I need to be more aware of, that I was kind of being dumb about, I guess, is that I should have really just focused and decided to figure it out before I moved on and not have been in such a rush to start coloring. But yeah, I do end up making a lot of changes. Like I said, I think that there was multiple things that were just a little bit off with the anatomy of her face that made it look so wrong. So there wasn't one thing that once I fixed it, it was like, oh, that's right. It was a bunch of little ones over time. I think that her nose was a little bit too long, and there was something a little bit weird with her lips that I ended up fixing. And one of the things that really helped was I tilted her head back so that she was actually looking up at the ghost, this person that she's supposedly having a conversation with, but before she was just kind of staring straight out and not even looking at her. So once I did that, it made the whole image make a lot more sense, where they were both having this conversation and they were looking at each other, and it made a lot more sense once I fixed that one little aspect. But yeah, so I think the thing that I learned was fix things that I know are wrong when I know it's wrong, and it will save me heartache in the long run. But in the end, I don't think that I really pushed the coziness and the warmth of the space that they're in nearly enough. I kind of forgot about that initial thought that I wanted it to be very warm and cozy, and I think that that's something that I'd like to pay attention more to in the future, is just paying attention to the mood that I want to create in my pieces. And I think for this one, it would have been kind of nice to have a secondary light source that was coming from within the room, something that would have been like a fire or a lamp, and have this more warm light source that would be reflecting on different surfaces and lighting these figures from the opposite side. So I would have a little bit of a cool light coming in from the window, and then I could have a warm light coming from inside of the interior where they are actually at. And I feel like that would have pushed it more and had it felt more warm and a little bit more dimensional. But Yeah, I mean, I may go back and add that, but I think for now it's more of a something that I can be aware of in my future pieces. So I actually really loved doing the pattern on her robe. It was something really pleasant where I could have this really finely detailed element to her clothing, and I feel like that's something that really adds a lot more visual interest, but it also makes her clothing feel like something that someone would actually own and put together and wear, where it's not as basic as it would be if it was just a single color. And I think that that's something that I'd really like to get into more, is drawing more patterns and more textures that really show what type of material that particular object is. And that's something that I don't really do very much at all, and I think that that'll add a lot more visual interest, and it'll just really enrich the pieces that I do. So I'm excited to see how I can utilize that in future pieces, and just it's a new technique that I really haven't put much thought into, so I'm excited about that. So this is actually one of my favorite steps for doing illustrations, and that's when I get to go in and add all these final little touches and flares, and it just gives it a lot more visual interest. And one of the things that I usually end up doing in this step is where I add more color variation. So when there's like one big shape of a single color, I go in and I add a little bit variations of the color. So like for her tights that she's wearing, I added a little bit of a blue to her knees and a little bit more of a red color to her feet, I think, and it makes it look much more real and rounded out, where objects in the real world, they're never like one single color. They always have different hues that are coming through on that, and I love adding that variation to it. I also like adding shine to different surfaces, and just it's really fun and pleasant and relaxing to be able to put in these different elements into the piece. It feels very rewarding that I finally like reached that step where I can put on these little dashes of things that I like. So that is pretty much it for this piece. I think that I will actually go back in and try adding that secondary light source with the warm lighting, and I think that that'll make this piece that much more interesting, that it's worth it. So it'll be seeing a little bit more love for me, but yeah, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you can catch all my future art videos, and I will see you at my next one. Bye!